And I walked in the garage with that cop, and I looked at my daughter in the corner of the garage under a blue sheet of little tissue. The same kind that I had seen in CSI and fucking Miami and New York or whatever the movie cop show, but it was real. It was in my fucking life. It was in my house, in my eyes, in my heart, and it was my fucking daughter. Ooh, baby. Haha. We'll be back after this commercial break, is all I wanted to hear, but I couldn't.
Marcel Roston, a brave-hearted survivor sharing an intimate and heart-wrenching tale of losing someone to suicide. His journey brings forth the nuanced complexities of grief, addiction, misunderstanding of suicide, and the unyielding persistence of an absent father. His story is a heartbreaking testament of impossible pain, shouldering the profound love of a father, but his sorrow has been transformed into a lifelong mission to prevent suicide and support those affected by it. The details he shares are raw and at times almost unbearably painful, a visceral reminder that we need to listen more, judge less, and extend empathy fully. My name is Dan, and this is Hard Knocks Talks, your mental health podcast. Hey Marcel, how's it going?
Good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us tonight. Is there
Thanks for having me.
is there anything that you'd like to say before we jump in?
Let's get it on. We've already messed around enough.
Okay.
This is Hard Knocks Talks.
All right, if you are struggling with the substance use of a loved one or have tragically lost a loved one to drug-related harms, reach out to Stronger Together Canada peer-led support groups by Mums Stop the Harm. If you are in search of private addictions treatment, check out Prairie Sky Recovery Centre located in Leipzig, Saskatchewan. To make contact or learn more about today's sponsors, check out our new merch, or if you want to show us some love and buy us a coffee, all of those links are in the show notes below. Marcel, where do we even begin? I read an article about you earlier today, and I took some notes. And one of the things that I noticed at the beginning of the article was that you started sharing your story from when your daughters were born, but in that same paragraph, you mentioned that you didn't want to be the father that walked out on you 10 years prior. Now, what that brought to my mind is, what was your childhood like growing up? Did you have it rough at home?
Um, for the most part, you could say yes. I mean, rough nowadays, sadly, is such a broad and widely descriptive used term that it's really up to interpretation. I came from what you would consider your regular lower class dysfunctional biracial home in Southern California and in a small town in Massachusetts. My dad was a man who made children and knew how to hang out with them until they irritated him. And then, he wasn't really a paternal dad. There was no nurturing from a father. It was more, he was an active addict. And when I say active addict, he found a way to provide for his own addiction without becoming a hindrance on the monies or finances it took to run the house as slim as it could be run.
If I do the math, if you were 20 years old when your daughters were born, he walked out 10 years prior, so you would have been 10 years old. How did his behavior affect the way you lived your life from 10 onwards?
Thankfully enough, I mean, I spent a little bit of time in childhood anger and resentment and confusion. I think, like all people do sometimes when it comes to broken homes or abandonment issues, we battle with the thought of we're not worthy or unlovable or not wanted. And I struggled with that, and it didn't really affect me or show in self-esteem, more so in anger and outbursts of physical fights when I was a kid. I was never really taught to be an antagonist. I wasn't taught to really pick on people's feelings or their emotions or their property. And I think a lot of that had to do with growing up on food stamps and growing up with hand me downs and growing
Mm-hmm.
up living at, my grandparents' house with my dad because they were dysfunctional,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so I never started shit. And and if you came over to me and started shit, that's where it ended.
You didn't want to be that dad. So when you are 20 years old and you're coming into fatherhood now of twin girls, um,
Right.
what were you trying to achieve? You said, I don't want to be that guy. Well, what guy did you want to be, and what guy were you able to be?
I wanted to be everything that I missed out on having as a child.
Hmm.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
That shit didn't play out.
Well, I mean, what do you, and what comes to
It
my mind is
didn't.
like, what did you
And
even know what you didn't have, you know?
right. And so I worked every day. I
Hmm.
had a job, I had insurance, I had an apartment, I paid rent, had groceries, I waited a couple of years for a criminal record. Um, but those things, I wanted to have that stability and that interaction and that constant of not just being an established role because I helped create a life, but being that involved parent that has 50% of a decision, to make in these young humans' lives, and it bears a lot of fucking weight on what I do in mine.
Hmm.
So when I was arrested for the theft of two jumpers,
What's a jumper?
bounce house, it's a bounce house, you
Oh,
know.
that's a weird
Yep.
thing to steal,
Yeah,
man.
I know, right?
What was the
Listen,
plan? Open a bouncy
the
castle
plan.
two
Okay,
birthdays?
so the plan was I have twin daughters. I wanted them to have
Okay.
bounce house, jump
Mm-hmm.
cancels,
Mm-hmm.
jump castles.
Mm-hmm.
And like most people in active addiction, we either work a crappy job or say we work a crappy job and, you know, make money elsewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So I ordered these two jump houses from a company and wrote them a check on a closed account and was arrested for that a couple weeks later,
Mm-hmm.
But to the addict mind, my mission was accomplished because my daughters didn't go without on their birthday.
How old were your girls when that all fell apart? Now, and
Four,
they were four. And when you split, your mother was incarcerated. Where did the girls end up?
foster care,
Mm.
CPS, Child Protective Services came. My children were recovered from their home. They were locked in inside with their older step siblings. My maternal grandmother found, or not found them. That makes it sound weird. They called her and said, "We can't get out of the house. Mom locked us in." And she was like, "Meh, all right."
Hmm.
Mom's been gone a couple days. The oldest is 9. The youngest is 2. Um, so let's figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
CPS came over and the police came over and removed the kids from the house. And um, I began the journey of righting my wrongs and making amends for a decision that was pretty fucking dumb.
How'd you get sober then? Did you just put the plug in the jug, so to
I just
speak?
quit.
You just quit.
Well, yeah, because I had to ask myself, my kids weren't, they didn't ask me to be here, dude, and that really struck a chord with me as far as, um, that's really, I think what shaped my parenting was every decision I had to be in, or every choice I had to be engaged in my children's lives. I
Mm.
took full advantage of it because I feel like my dad didn't.
In your life thus far, that we're like to the point that we're talking about now, with and
Yeah.
like with the relationship and with the addiction and the family and services involvement, was there ever any thoughts of suicide in any of that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. There were a
And
couple. Um, but oddly enough, I didn't, I couldn't correctly label them until after the death of my daughter. you
Mm.
know, if that makes sense. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, because they were both, that happened before. I was using drugs, man. So it was like, oh, he's probably just wigging out on drugs, or it must be the drugs that's making you think that,
Mm-hmm.
And then when my daughter passed away and she died the way that she did under the pretenses that she did, it kind of made me wake up and really take a look at my emotional state at that time and every significant moment prior to that.
Mm-hmm.
So I could finally put, as ignorant as I was to the definition of suicide and what caused it and what it was, I could finally put a name to that act, or I could put a name to that feeling. It
Mm-hmm.
wasn't the act of suicide, it was the ideation. And
Mm-hmm.
ideation is, you know, the visualization of it without really going through it.
Yeah. How long did it take to get the kids back?
It took the County of San Diego granted me 18 months to complete different programs, and it took me 13 months. They were back in my home. Full custody was restored, legal and physical,
Mm-hmm.
to me in 2001.
Mm. What was
Yeah.
that like for you? And I mean this in two ways. Like, what was it like reintegrating with your daughters, but also like having to be a father and a single father, no less, um, newly in sobriety. Like, tell us about what that was like.
Well, so I knew of sobriety for years, right? I'd gone to meetings. My uncles were alcoholics or, you know, drug addicts. My dad was a drug addict. I just
Yeah,
didn't really see it all. So um, when the kids were reunified with me, I don't really ever think that they were disconnected. I think that they lived in other homes.
yeah,
I was an active parent. Even in that process, they were in foster care. I'd call 3 times a week, seven
right.
o'clock.
Mm-hmm.
Every visit, I'd go to the visit. If it was Halloween, I would go to trick or treat with them. I didn't really rely on anybody to give me a ride or anything like that because they weren't their kids, they were
Mm-hmm.
mine.
Mm-hmm.
And so the feverish kind of commitment that I displayed in pursuing my kids coming back home could be equated to like a drug addict's mentality, how they chase the substance or how they chase the liquid. I chased the reunification with my kids.
I can relate. I did the exact same thing. My son was apprehended, and I chased after it like a pit bull with a throw pillow until I got him back.
Yeah,
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 and then
yeah,
and
and
then
and
that became who I was. I was that
right,
single dad. That was my identity. I was that sober guy, and look at him. He's such a stand-up
right,
guy, and all the accolades. Was it like that for you? That was like the
yeah,
fix
and
for me,
then
you know?
right, and then and through your lived experience, um, you you do become, if you're vocal and verbal and vulnerable, you become some sort of icon or something, in the recovery community, because here's this dude white knuckling it and
Mm-hmm.
banging it out of the park. um but the times that you don't see are the times that you cry or the times that you don't get a chance to visit. But I would share those on a group level so that there was that sense of equal vulnerability. And so when my daughter died, I was clean and sober.
Yeah.
And the only place I knew to go was the meetings in Narcotics Anonymous, because it's the only place where I felt okay.
What were the events that led up to her death? Like, do you think that there were driving factors that brought her
Yes, I
to
do.
that? What do you
Totally
think
do.
they were?
So in 2008, I was divorced from my son Jordan's mother. I
Okay.
married her in just late 2001, after my daughters had been returned to my custody. 2008, I had completed the 7 years of stay away from your support group, so I had mastered this life on life's terms type thing, and didn't have to go to meetings or fellowship or sponsor or anybody, because I did my 12 steps, right? So
Okay.
um
So this was a
and so
this was like a
oh
self
yeah, this
this
was here we
because that's
go.
not written down anywhere, man. Like I've been in
Right,
those basements,
right,
man. There ain't no 7 year
right,
shit anywhere.
right. And so I decided to live in the life on life's terms as a
Okay.
normie, and it bit me in the ass because I wasn't prepared for the dysfunction in a relationship. I
Mm.
hadn't tackled my part of that in my dynamic. I hadn't,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because I had lost myself in work and in the role of being the dad of daughters that has a son, and this, and
Mm-hmm.
um so the divorce happened. I relocated to Portland, Oregon from San Diego, California. When I moved, the state of California, even though I had full custody, the state of California required 45 days prior notice to relocating any minor children out of the state's jurisdiction. Um, or you would be subject to kidnapping charges or child endangerment. Um, it kind of freaked me out, dude. So
Mm-hmm.
I called their mom,
Uh-huh.
and the tumultuous drug addiction and drug laden relationship, dysfunctional as youth that we had together, didn't provide a basis of trust uh, within my heart for her as a parent.
Uh-huh.
And I called her and I said, "Hey, I'm moving, and I'm taking the girls with me. Um, and I will let have them on the Christmas and working it out on the phone, which never really works out, looking at it in hindsight. But
Was
long
she
story
ever
short,
was she in the your daughter's lives at
no.
all previous to this?
Um, I would be remiss to say sparingly at best.
Okay.
And so when the kids asked, you know, where's mom, or how come I can't go see mom? In the beginning, you go, oh, because she's working, or oh, she has this, or oh, that. I'm going to tell you, kids get tired of that shit.
Yeah.
And they know the truth because they hear you arguing with their mom or dad on the phone in another room through the wall. They're not stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that kind of bit me in the ass. And my daughters asked me, "We've heard you. Tell us what's going on." And I said, "I don't feel like it's my place, but your mom does. She's not coming to see you, dude. We've called from the living room together. Here, you call her."
Mm-hmm.
And that kind of hurt them too. Uh, but being young and new to the appropriate way to manage a split household, looking back, that wasn't any benefit to them. When she said to me on the phone that day, yes, Marcel, please bring them here. Let me be the mom that they deserve to have. My reply to her was, I don't trust you as far as I can throw you uphill in a rainstorm. And but the fear of being arrested for kidnapping was greater than my lack of trust for her as a person. Um, and I relied heavily on the hope that she was not full of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 weeks after I moved my daughter's things to her home, my daughter's mother in the state of California filed for full custody on the grounds of abandonment and neglect, stating that I was an absent father and that I dropped them off out of desperation and was essentially transient with no roots or base. And she cited the recent divorce for the grounds for instability, which was nothing but bullshit. And unfortunately, in California court and in U.S. courts in 2009, 2010 to 2015, 16, it was very strong bias against men.
Yeah.
And I showed up to every court date and I gave them everything they needed. And when the judgment was rendered in finality, I stood up in court and said, Your Honor, you're making the biggest mistake of your life, and you're going to regret this one day. And his retort to me was, If you have one more outburst like that, I will put you in contempt of court. And I said, Well, at least you'd be doing your fucking job then, wouldn't you?
Mm.
And I got up and walked out of the courthouse. Now, months passed and years passed since that judgment, and many, many times we had gone back into court and fought for visitation, just for physical visitation, and not the ability to be allowed to have that visitation, but the urgency of their mother to facilitate her legal part of that visitation. It came down to a court case was closed, and due to parental alienation, domestic violence, um, early age drug use, and a absolute disconnect with her mom, I feel those were very big factors in my daughter's suicide. Her mother allowed her to really have free reign to date or to talk to people, and was really unsupervised, and ended up dating men who were 5, 6 years older than her when she was 15, and being subjected to that. And I think that it had a lot to do with parental alienation, um, and being ostracized from a strong father figure, all of the sudden, essentially,
Mm-hmm.
and there comes a lot of trust in that action too, or lack thereof.
Mm-hmm.
um she became involved with an abusive man, and reached out to me to help her recollect her belongings from his home one evening, and I did. And she expressed to me her desire for me to just be a father in that moment and watch. um, and that was hard for me because, if someone is physically or emotionally harming your child, no matter if it's a man or a woman, you're going to want to go papa bear or mama bear, right? Well,
Yeah.
I stood and I watched my daughter at 16 years old conduct herself like a grown woman of 40 or 50 years. She walked up to the door, knocked on it, and said, I'm here to collect my belongings. I'm not here to argue with you, and I don't want to fight. She then walked in and grabbed her box of crap and said, Dad, let's get the hell out of here. And
Mm.
I got in the truck, and she cried for about a half a block. We pulled over and smoked a cigarette, and then I drove her home.
Mm.
Um, yeah. So that was a huge moment for me to see my child, still a child, act like an adult. And also a great moment for a father to be included in a daughter's life when it's not pretty and it's
Mm.
not fairy tale.
But it sounds to me like
That
you were involved in in somewhat of a liberating experience where she had made the decision
Oh
to
yeah,
break free from this, and you got to
yeah.
take part in it in some way. Let's talk now about what what it was like coming away from that. So you had this experience with your daughter. How long was it between that experience of her leaving that relationship to when she committed suicide? What
5 months,
was
man.
and nobody saw it coming?
I didn't. I wasn't um, in the communication loop of the everyday life of my teenage daughters. Unfortunately, I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure that it happened, and I believe that people turned a whatever eye to it, um, and it kind of troubled her. But
Mm-hmm.
um, she did her best, I believe, to kind of avoid it, and stop it from happening because um, the communication attempts still continued from this individual, and the phone calls and the text messages and the emails, and that's um, ultimately how my daughter met her death was through an electronic communication or conversation with this young man, where he became verbally abusive and said some things that she was, by his word, never going to be able to be loved. Uh, she's going to be nothing but a whore, and no one is ever going to be capable of loving her, and she's never going to be able to feel it, so she should just kill herself. Um, Now, I strongly believe in my heart of hearts that my daughter did not and would not ever feel or think of herself in that light or fashion. I just don't.
Mm-hmm.
However, I do feel my daughter, all of my children, my daughter especially, Chloe, was the type of person to make you sit with your words for the rest of your life. And so she had probably had enough of trying to explain the hurt that she had felt to so many deaf ears. And it wasn't with malice. It was more, I feel, a irrefutable call to fucking action to not only address domestic violence, but stop ignoring and downplaying our own emotional well-being just for the safety and comfort of friendship or family or belonging.
Tell us about the moment that you got the phone call or that you found out.
March 26, 2014. It was about 2:30 in the afternoon, and I was sitting on the tailgate of a work truck. I worked for Cole's Carpets,
Mm-hmm.
and we were at MCAS Miramar doing some inventory. It was a regular fucking March day, a little bit gloomy, and my phone rang. And I looked at my phone, and it was my daughter's mom's boyfriend, and I was like, what the fuck does this guy want? And I answered the phone, and all I heard was, Marcel, you got to get here. You got to get here now. She's gone. Chloe's gone. And I said, what? And he said it again. And I said, okay. And I hung the phone up and I walked inside and I asked my supervisor how much trouble I'd get in if I stole the company truck. And he said, what do you mean? And I said, well, you can find out in 2 minutes or you can get your ass in the truck with me. Um, I think my daughter is dead. I don't know. And so I got back in the truck. He followed and got in the passenger side, and we drove. Ironically, I was about 14 minutes from her house at work. Drove through the sentry at the gate. They didn't really like that, I heard later on.
Mm-hmm.
And pulled up to the house, and there were two cops. There was one on either side of the garage door. I pulled up, parked in the middle of the street, and got out. Walked up to the door or walked up the driveway. And I said, where's my daughter? Where in the fuck is my daughter? They said, sir, stay right there. We can't let you come in here. Da 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 da. And they kind of like approached me as most peace officers do to kind of diffuse and deflect and close the gap for incidents of injury or mayhem. And I calmly and concisely said, if either one of you young men decide to make a move, I have no problem killing either one of you to see my child. So that's a decision you're going to have to make about pension if you want to go there. I'm not here to cause any trouble. I just want to see my child. And then a lieutenant came out from my daughter's mom's house and said, Mr. Roston. I said, that's who I am. You should know that by now. And he said, I'm sorry, and I can't understand. I can't fathom what you're going through right now. And I said, as long as you don't touch me, you won't have to figure it out. I just want to see my child, and that's all I want to see. And I said, I understand that it's an investigation. I understand that it's a crime scene, and I understand that there's a dead fucking body in that garage right now. But what you don't understand is I don't give a fuck who's in the middle of this. I'm going to go see it, and I'm not going to touch anything in there. I don't care about anything in there but my child. And he said, I agree, and I understand. And if I promise to let you in there, do you promise to not do anything fucking stupid? And I said, long as you promise first. As the tears welled up in my eyes, he asked me if I was a religious person, and I said, not right now. Not right now, buddy. And he asked if he could pray over me, and he prayed over me, and he asked for forgiveness, and he asked for grace, and he asked for healing. Whatever that healing was, whether it be for Chloe or for myself or the entire family. And then he walked me into the street, and he said, listen, I'm going to walk you in here, but you can't touch nothing. You can't say nothing. You can't do nothing. You could see her, and then we got to walk right back out. But before we put her in the coroner's bus and before they take her to the morgue, I will allow you and the family, and only the family, to say goodbye. And I said, fucking do it. And we walked past those two officers, and with every ounce of my being, I looked at those boys straight in the eye and said, I fucking told you I was going to get in this garage. Don't ever play with me again. And I walked in the garage with that cop, and I looked at my daughter in the corner of the garage under a blue sheet of little tissue. The same kind that I'd seen in CSI and fucking Miami and New York or whatever the movie cop show, but it was real. It was in my fucking life. It was in my house, in my eyes, in my heart, and it was my fucking daughter. Ooh, baby. We'll be back after this commercial break is all I wanted to hear, but I couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I walked out. And that's when all of my daughter's mom's friends and family showed up. And my daughter, my other daughter, her twin sister, came home from school. And I stood in the street and I watched her mother absolutely collapse in the driveway. The tears and the screaming and the cries I still hear. But I didn't show any emotion because I was really fucking angry. At that moment where you're like identifying people that could have did some different shit to make a different outcome.
Mm-hmm.
She was probably number one and still is on the list, but that's okay. The next person I saw was my daughter, Clarissa. She came walking down the street, and the tears formed in her eyes as she walked across the street. As she walked up to me, she said, Dad, what in the fuck am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do now, Dad? What do I do? What do I do? I said, Clarissa, I don't fucking know, man. But I know you're supposed to finish high school, maybe fucking get married. But I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't even know what the fuck I'm supposed to do. And she went to cry with her mom and her friends and stepsister, and I stood in the street and screamed. And then the call came from the lieutenant. Mr. Roston, you ready? Yeah, I'm ready. You guys ready? Well, let's go. And my daughter had a lot of friends. My daughter lived with her mom in a kind of in the city of San Diego, in the downtown kind of suburb little neighborhood. So she had a lot of friends, you know. As the driveway filled up with people, her mother, myself, her sister, her half brothers, and her mom's boyfriend all lined up to see Chloe. And I let everybody go first, you know. Um, and they all cried and they all said, "Oh my God, I'm sorry." And all the shit you hear on TV, I heard in that garage. And then it was my turn, and I walked up and I brushed my daughter's hair back like I had done for many years before that. And I saw the quiet, silent look that I had seen many years before that, many times in a row when I put her to sleep, or I'd go and peek at her just to make sure she was fucking real or okay. And she looked just like that, man. Just fucking like that. Quiet, relaxed, at ease. And I knelt down and I cupped her head right behind her right ear like I always used to. And I gave her a kiss on the forehead and I whispered in her ear. I said, "Daddy loves you. I understand. And I'm not mad at you at all. I'm finally glad that you don't have to worry anymore, and it's okay." And I rose from her, and I turned around and walked out of the garage, and I watched her go into the coroner's van, pull out of the driveway, drive down the street, all the way to the end. And when she made a right on Murphy Canyon Road from Neva Avenue, it started to fucking rain. Not torrential rain, just a drizzle. Like the heavens had fucking cried because she was coming home. And so I got a chance to see my son. And I got in the car and I went to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. And I sat in that meeting during the greeting and the opening. And I introduced myself as an addict. And I said, "My name is Marcel and I'm an addict. And my fucking daughter just hung herself in the garage. And I don't know whether to laugh or fucking cry. I don't know if I want to go to the gun store or the dope house. But I know that I'm in the right place, right here, right now." And I've just tried to learn what it means to grieve, what it means to love, what it means to lose, and what it means to live next to someone without that pain since that day.
How long was it after that happened that you started to move towards what you're doing today with your advocacy, with your public facing strategy, I would say?
I think it was 2 years. I think it was about 2.5 years. I reeled. I was reeling from, from her death. And then, you become enmeshed in the fundraising and the being, going to the events. And I really found a lot of peace in that. Um, being around like-minded people, you know. I used to
Mm-hmm.
go to a bunch of NA conventions because it was cool. Just being in a room full of a bunch of dope fiends, it's awesome,
I
right?
agree.
It
Mm-hmm.
is. It's like
Campouts,
the best
campouts
time,
too.
the
You go to
best,
campouts.
right?
You got campouts there.
Yeah. So that's when I started to go to these American Foundation for Suicide Prevention walks and such. I started to see a difference that I could make in an
Mm.
environment that I felt comfortable, right?
Mm-hmm.
Bringing awareness to groups of people, bringing together groups of people to celebrate something. And I say celebrate because that's the way to change. Celebrate something tragic and horrible. Huh. So um, I kind of dove into fundraising, and it started regular as um, just a guy at a bar,
Mm.
the
Hang on a
local
minute now.
pub.
Hang on a minute now. Unpack that a bit more for us. Celebrate. Now, how do you celebrate something like that? What does that look like?
Okay, so if I were to tell you to come to a fundraiser for suicide prevention, you'd probably think that it was going to be like some drab ass memorial for all the people who had miserably ended their lives or lost their battle with whatever, right? Not
Yeah.
here, not me. So what
Mm.
I did was on St. Patty's Day, we had a pub crawl.
Hmm.
All the proceeds went to suicide prevention. We all
Hmm.
we had moments where we'd share stories and we'd show people that were struggling, but they were here. And then it moved from a pub to a golf tournament. Everybody likes to play golf, right?
Hmm.
So you
Mm-hmm.
tell them, hey, man, we're doing this fundraiser for suicide prevention. They go, awesome. It's not some memorial tournament, right? So again, the theme and the environment is an atmosphere is upbeat, right? And
Mm-hmm.
lighthearted. You got massage chairs and Bloody Marys. You got cigar bars and you got strippers with hot wings. Like
Whoa.
it's complete right. No, but it's completely and the reason I did it that way is because suicide is non-discriminatory. I don't care who you are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care who you are. So why would I exclude or limit anyone from coming to experience something that wasn't a movement really to make myself look better? It was a movement in the progress of changing something that really fucked me up.
Hmm.
So those that attitude of just coming out, having a good time, non-committal, just showing up because you're in the beginning showing up is a great way to show support,
Mm-hmm.
right? All of our friends when we have a great idea are like, "I'm with you 100%. Let's do it." And they never fucking show up.
Oh no, I know, man.
Right? So they have these excuses, but if you tell people, "Listen, I'm going to get you absolutely slam bastard wasted for like 125 bucks and get to play golf." Everybody's going to come out because they don't think it's going to happen,
Mm.
right? And when you
Mm-hmm.
tell them that it's about suicide, they think, "Oh man, it's going to be like this weird like humane society every other hole we're going to have this thing punched down our throat, you know? Like a cash grab." And it wasn't that. It was the opposite. I planned and formed these events so that people could really physically see that the excuse that they don't have time didn't work.
Mm.
Doesn't
Did
fucking work, dude.
did your did this happening, Chloe's passing, did it bring you closer to your family, or did it drive you apart in a way?
Absolutely, absolutely drove us apart.
Mm.
Yeah, my brother, my sister, my mom, well, my whole family really. No one really knows how do you deal with that?
Yeah.
You know, you
Mm-hmm.
know,
And that's to this
you don't
day.
know. You get to this day, and it's. I mean, and it's not. I don't take it personal. I look at it as a social inequity. So the advocacy and the work that I do is to eliminate that inequity.
Mm. Mhm.
That's really the whole thing is like I could give you the sugar coated back of the envelope, description of what, Procter and Gamble or somebody somewhere said that suicide looks like, or I could swallow the honesty pill and go, fuck it. I'm just going to tell you who I am in order for you to be able to give me the real love and truth that I, as a person, need,
Mhm. Mhm.
you know?
Um, before we move on, and I gotta know, uh, you mentioned that her or Chloe's ex boyfriend or abuse. Let's call him her
Yeah, yeah.
abuser. Uh,
Right.
you think that some things that he said to her contributed to her ending her life.
Yeah.
Now, how how the fuck do you deal with that
Not
as
my
a
karma.
father?
Here's the weird thing, right? So I'm glad you brought that up because a
Me
couple
too.
weeks after a couple weeks after her funeral, I went to go to see her, at her grave. Shout out to Holy Cross Cemetery in San Diego. Woo woo.
Mm,
Um, so like when you go you in the movies you see that scene where the guy drives into the cemetery and there's absolutely nobody there,
yeah,
right? And the wind's blowing across the street and it's like, "Ooh,"
very
right? And then
cinematic.
there's that one dude that's like walking across the street in the distance.
Hmm.
That happened to me one day, and that one dude was her ex-boyfriend, right? So I pull
Hmm.
in and I'm speaking to my daughter at her grave, and I can feel somebody behind me. Not right behind me, but behind me. I know somebody's there,
Yeah.
right? So I turn and this guy says, "How do you know Chloe?" And I said, "Chloe, that's my daughter. How do you know Chloe?" And he goes, "Well, that's my nephew's ex-girlfriend." Oh, 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 oh. Are you delivering me a package right now that I get to play with in the cemetery? Is that really what's going on? That's what goes through my mind, right?
So it's not her abuser, it's her abuser's uncle.
Wait a second,
Okay.
because a couple seconds later, her abuser appears in the fucking doorway, right? So now not only do I have one, but I have two. It's like I gotta buy one, get one without buying shit.
What happened?
And I looked that young man in his face and I said, "You know what you did? And you know who you have to dance with. And it would be absolutely disrespectful to my daughter and everybody that has died and is resting here for me to take out what I need to on you and what you justifiably deserve. So that tells me that it's not my fucking job, buddy, but you're going to get yours. And it might not be for me, but it's going to be somebody that gives it to you tenfold." And I walked away. And as I walked to my car, his uncle said to me, "Well, if you want to do something, I give out black eyes and bloody noses for free." And I looked at that young boy and I said, Sir, I don't think that you really understand the ramifications of the words that you're using. Because I will strip butt naked and have you for lunch and your friend too right now. But my daughter is worth more than that. And I'm not going to let you fucking win. I'm going to figure out a way to make you absolutely fucking obsolete. It's going to happen. But this isn't the way it's going to happen. Because if I eliminate you, then I go away. Therefore, my kids lose. That's not the game here.
Mm.
And so I got in my car and I decided to make it my mission and my legacy to change how people looked at my daughter as a victim of domestic violence or a victim of suicide. She, I hope, when I am laid to rest, will be viewed as a fucking cutting edge trendsetter being passed away for 8 years. I think that's pretty fucking awesome.
Mm.
And so to turn triumph or from to turn tragedy into triumph is really what it's about.
Mm.
And that's my mindset. in everyday life, man, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Have you come across now? Now, tell us about the organization that you founded. Correct?
Yep. Yep.
So, tell us a bit about that. But also, I also want to know, and I don't want it to get lost in conversation. Have you ever dealt with, and how did you deal with? I'm sure you have people who don't understand, people who might say suicide is an act of weakness or cowardice or whatever. How do you deal with that?
So I have a rule, right? Uh, and it's called the three statement rule, right? So if the topic ever comes up about suicide and someone
Mm-hmm.
has a viewpoint like that, it's a quitter's solution. It's for the weak. It's for the mere, the meek and the weary. I give them three negative statements to make: negative or ignorant, either one, or uninformed, whatever you want to frame it. And I challenge each one of those statements, right? With
Mm-hmm.
just a rebuttal, just a regular rebuttal. And then if they continue to not want to be open to see another person's perspective, that can be maddening. So I just chalk it up as ignorance and not really a personal attack. And honestly, those are the people that fuel the persistence in what I'm doing in mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so the organization, the foundation, the center that I formed is a grief and trauma resolution center. Um, what do we do there? We help you process grief and recover from traumatic events by taking the time to listen to the event and then, or the trauma or the person, and from a first person's, sometimes clinical, sometimes just average Joe perspective, we bounce things off one another and give you that time to process it, to feel it, and to devise a plan that best suits you moving forward for your mental health.
Hmm.
Pretty much it.
Got some
And
comments.
it's a pretty simple, lots of comments. I didn't do it.
I got a couple, not much.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah,
We'll look at them. Is Ari? I think Rachel,
yeah.
right? Right?
Yep,
Rachel.
yep.
Rachel. Tomorrow needs you. This is him, ladies and gentlemen. This is the organization. Gray has helped me save my life in midst of his own stuff. He's shown me a different perspective. We've got one more from Onyx. Onyx, thank you. Onyx says, God, creator, source, bless this wounded warrior soul with your pure love. His life is precious. His journey and message is powerful. Bless you, Gray. Keep rising up to greatness. Aho.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah. Now, Tomorrow
You know
Needs
what?
You. That's the
Yep,
name
yep.
of your
Spelled with a
organization?
two, not a T-O.
Okay.
It's just
There it
like
is.
this.
Yeah. Actually, your link is in the description or the overview, wherever you're watching. You can find a link to Gray's Instagram there.
Yep.
But before we go, something that I noticed right away when you're explaining your what your organization does is you didn't mention suicide awareness or prevention. You mentioned we work with people through their shit, is what you said.
Pretty
Um,
much.
yeah, so that's interesting to me because what you are doing is raising awareness about suicide. Why wouldn't that be one of the first things that you said when I ask you what you do?
Because if I were to integrate that word into the description of my services,
Hmm.
psychologically and socially, there has been a block put in people to avoid contact, disclosure, or even communication with a suicide prevention resource center. It's kind of
Hmm.
like a battered women's shelter. You don't hear a bunch
Hmm.
of women going, "Last Tuesday, I went to a battered women's shelter because I was getting my ass whooped." They say, "Last Tuesday, I made the appropriate changes in my life to no longer feel that way.
Hmm.
Where'd you
Mm-hmm.
find that? They're not going to tell you. I found it at Betsy Ross's
Battered
abuse
woman's.
shelter. Right. They're going to be
Yeah.
like, through transformative thought processes and many,
Mm-hmm.
many hours of self care, I just came to believe and realize that I'm a better bitch than that. Yeah. Right. So, I
So,
mean, it's really in this time, as obvious and apparent as the need for suicide prevention, wellness, education, and outreach is, you cannot put that on your billboard and be a successful means of mainstream support or
mm,
relief, because of the stigma that is greater than the resources to dispel that stigma, if it makes sense.
tell me, what is some ways that you have seen effective in changing the trajectory in someone's path towards suicide?
I think the best tool to combat um, symptoms and signs of depression and suicide is absolutely coming into a situation with with no expectation, with
Mm,
zero. Essentially, bringing yourself to a point of caveman, if you will, cavewoman, kind of prehistoric, void of all of the fancy words that it takes to deny that we're depressed or deflect that we're depressed, or really judge the person that you're listening to. If someone calls me and they say, I just need to talk, bro, I need you to hear me, that means I have to shut up. I got to shut up.
mm,
And being available all the time is paramount, right? When you say being available all the time, people think, well, how are you going to get a job? When are you going to sleep? Are you going to eat? When are you going to wipe your butt? Being able to tell someone on the phone when you answer, hey, what's up, dude? I'm going through it. Hey, are you in a space where you are going to hurt yourself or someone else? Right? Well, no. Can this wait like 12 minutes? I really got to take a shit. Right? And you go take a shit. And then
yeah.
12 minutes, you call them back. Right? Because some people, they minimize the importance of other people's outreach without giving that person the respect that they are due by just reaching out.
Mm, mm.
It's hard to call somebody when you're hurting. So when
Yeah.
my phone rings and it's somebody on the other end, I look at it like this. They tried twice as hard to dial my 10 numbers than I did to push one button.
Promise you that. That's a fact. Yeah. Where can people find you? I mean, we already talked a little bit about it.
You can find me at Tomorrow Needs You. That's the number 2, MorrWneedsYou. At Instagram, that's also my TikTok. You can find more inspiring dumb stuff at Gray Hair Wear on TikTok. We are in the process of building a user friendly and resource appropriate website. So I don't want to mislead anyone and get their hopes up with that dog shit. But you can find me by phone or social media. I
Hmm.
mean, I'm a hard dude to I'm a hard dude to miss.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I say to people too. If you can't find me, it's not my fault.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for joining us tonight, man. That was very impactful testimony and a great conversation.
Listen, can I say a couple of things before we leave?
Yes, say the things.
Okay. I just want to say a couple of things to each and every person that took the time out of their days or nights to tune in to the Hard Knocks Talks podcast featuring me. I'm eternally grateful. The only thing I ask of you is to be the best person you can possibly be and give yourself an honest assessment every chance you possibly can on how you can improve just a little bit every day. That's it, man. Let's go. Tomorrow needs you.
All right. Cool, man.
All right.
Take
Hey,
care.
man, you're awesome. You look like in
Oh,
Dana Carvey a little bit.
Dana Carvey? I don't know who that is either.
Yeah.
You have, before the show, you were saying like all the
Listen, Dana
this guy and this
Carvey's
guy, and like I don't know
Canadian.
anybody that you're
Dana
talking about.
Carvey's Canadian. Dana
Dude, there's
Carvey's
more
Canadian.
than 3 of us in Canada.
It's
I
you,
don't know everyone.
Dana Carvey, and Drake. Those are the only 3 people in Canada. So, yeah, be well. All right.
All right, man. Take care.
Sweet. Later, dude.
All right, if you got something out of tonight's show, please click that subscribe button at the bottom of the screen on YouTube. If you are not yet subscribed to us on YouTube, jump over there, do that, please. Hit that bell. We go live every Friday morning, every Sunday evening. We got tons of content for you to catch up on. If you don't have time to sit and watch us for an hour, you can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, wherever you listen to podcasts. Jump on over there. Give us a 5-star review. Give us a review on Apple Podcasts. Do all the things. Help us grow. I gotta go. Take care, everyone. We'll see you next week.
Say, this is Hard Knocks Talks.